What the Mum podcast. My name is Maria Newman and I will be your host. Every mum to be knows that as soon as she becomes a mum, her world will change forever. Everyone is keen to give you advice based on their own experiences. Other mums delight in sharing their horror stories so that new mums are better prepared for what might happen. The lack of sleep, feeling exhausted most of the time, living in bodies with even more wobbly bits and never having any privacy. But everyone's story is unique. Everyone's experience is personal. On this podcast, I will be sharing real stories told by mums like you and I about their experience of motherhood and how life changes when you become a mum. This podcast is about showing you that you're not alone. We may not be in the same boat, but we are experiencing a similar storm. I hope these stories will inspire you to do what you want, be who you want to be. Anything is possible if you really want it and if it is really important to you. If you want to find out more about me and who I am, check out my website, mummyinabreak.co.uk. However, for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast episode. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. During this podcast series, I will be interviewing 6 awesome women who will be sharing with us their mum story. My guest today is Margie Chavasse, who helps you to master your health before your health masters you. But she is also a mum who's taken the bull by the horns in order to help her children get better in charge, should I say, and all whilst her husband was in a war zone. Thanks for joining me today, Margie.
It's great to be here, Maria.
So, Margie, who is Margie?
Well, as you've already said, I am a mother of 3 girls. I am a wife of 1 husband. I am a grandmother of 2 girls. And I am me. What I do work-wise is I specialise in helping people who are at their wits' end, actually, hitting a brick wall with their health and really not knowing what to do. I help them find out what the issues are behind them and then hopefully help them solve it. So I've got a number of children on my books at the moment as well, and they can have a variety of different symptoms. And we work through those and help them get better.
So basically, you're a magician.
Well, I don't know. I was also a finance director of a multi-million-pound charity for a while. So I come from a sort of scientific, mathematic kind of background. And I started doing what I do now only back in 2015. So despite my aged looks, I have not been doing this hugely long relative to my age.
But you are helping lots of people to address and resolve their own personal challenges in health.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So the big question is, did you always know that you wanted to be a mum?
Oh, yes. I think from my very early childhood, I'm the youngest of 3 children, and I think I always wanted to be a mum. I always wanted to have something really reliant on me, something that really needed me. My siblings certainly didn't need me. I was just a pain around their ankles. But I knew I just wanted that unshakable love a parent has for their child, which it was a challenge for me as the children grew a little bit older, because you want them objectively, you want them to be able to be independent and strong and stand on their own 2 feet and to fly well. But actually, when you're that mum and they're getting more able to do things, it's really quite terrifying seeing them taking their first leap into whatever stage it is that they've reached. But you just bite your tongue, swallow your anxiety, and let them do it. And I think I've done reasonably well. They're all in their 30s now.
Yeah, they've survived a good few decades. That's good news.
It's quite good, isn't it?
Yeah. My children, my daughter in particular is obsessed with like the high ropes and go ape type activities.
Oh, great fun.
It is great fun, but it's exactly like you said. I remember the first time she and her brother, which was about 2 years ago now, went up for the first time. So she would have been 8, Luca would have been, oh my goodness, 5. And they were with their cousin who was in his early 20s going up the high ropes. And I knew I had to let them do it, but inside I'm just going to say very scared for them, because, you know, they're high off the ground. You want their safety, but they were adamant and they wanted to do it. I knew I just had to let them do it. And now they go and I'm completely fine. But it is seeing them for the first time do something where you can't protect them, where you feel helpless.
Absolutely. Yes, we used to do those high rope type things too. I used to jump out of aeroplanes before I had children. And when I had children, I couldn't even go skiing, let alone jump out of an aeroplane. So yeah, just you're so protective about yourself, won't take risks, and won't and really don't want to take any risks with them. I mean, it's the ultimate sacrifice in some ways, isn't it?
It's funny, isn't it? How it's as if there must be some kind of button in our brain that just gets switched off from where before we might be a bit gung-ho about stuff to then all of a sudden it's like, well, I've got to keep myself safe, because if I'm not safe, how can I look after them? And I've also got to look after them and make sure they're safe, because I want them to live, you know, have a nice long life. So it's striking that balance somehow, isn't it?
Yeah.
So tell me about your mum journey, and in particular, talk to me about obviously your daughter and how seeing her struggling has had an impact on you.
Yeah, well, first off, you know, becoming a mum is just totally life-changing. And then I had 3 under 5. And the mum journey has been full of immense highs, lots of laughter, lots of fun, but it's also had some really difficult, distressing times when things don't go quite as you hope they would. So I have 3 under 5, and my youngest at that point was 1.5, and we were on holiday, and she suddenly started coming out in a rash on her body, and I just watched this rash grow, and it just grew, and it covered her. So by the time we got back from holiday, I whipped her off to the doctor to say, hey, what's going on? And he said, oh, it's eczema. And he gave me some creams for it, and he said, I'll refer you to the pediatrician. So we went to the pediatrician. Obviously, between an appointment and the next appointment, there's a delay, and you're in this holding circle, really, of just applying hydrocortisone cream. And I was reluctant to use the stuff particularly, and I was bandaging her hands at night with her socks, with nice little woolly socks, and then you tape them around the wrist so that the child can't scratch. We went to the pediatrician, we went to the dietitian, we had tests, we had this, we had that, and I wasn't coming up with a proper solution. So meanwhile, this is if anybody's had a child who's not well, it absorbs so much of your own emotion, and then you can't give it to the rest of the family. And my husband was away; he was in the army at the time, and he was away doing sort of painting his face and hiding in bushes type stuff, and he wasn't around for support, and I had to do this kind of. You just have to realize you have to step up I didn't like what the answers were that the medical profession was giving me. And you want your child to be well, you need to be in good form for the rest of the family. And I realized it was up to me to do something about it. So I went to some alternative practitioners. Now, I was somebody who grew up in a very conventional family where meditating or just sitting quietly, frankly, was a bit woo-woo. So the idea of suddenly going to a series of different types of alternative therapy was so outside my own comfort zone, but you jolly well do it. You reach down and you just find you get over yourself and your own paradigm of what you think is possible. So eventually, I went to a chap who was a kinesiologist. Well, I hadn't a clue what a kinesiologist was, but he told me in half an hour what was causing the problem, and then in another half an hour he told me what we could do about it. And then I worked with his help for the next year to get her better, and she was the healthiest little thing. She's got lovely blue eyes anyway, but they were so blue, and she was so healthy, and it was an absolute joy to see. And I knew that is what I wanted to do, but I was working in finance. Well, I wasn't working at all at that point, but I was sort of financial logic, okay, this is woo-woo, does seem to have worked. I do want to do it, but it was decades until I did. But, you never stop being a mum. And it was another 20 years on, and my middle one at that point was working in London, and she got really tired. And she was, so you think, she's a 20-something-year-old, she's burning the candle at both ends, that's what it is. But no, she would spend the weekend recovering and getting her energy back. And then she had to spend the evenings after work just really not doing much to get her energy back. And then she started needing to leave work early. And she went to the doctor, and she had blood tests, and she had other tests, and those all came back normal. So she struggled on a bit, and then she went back and she had more tests, and they were still normal. And obviously she was not normal. And all the doctors could do was offer a sick note, which I didn't think really was appropriate. So I brought her home, and we went to look for alternative practitioners again to find the solution. Well, we did find a solution. It was another kinesiologist, a friend of mine, who suggested parasitic infections. And once we addressed those, then we had things turned around, and she began to get better. But the parasites don't turn up in all the things that the doctors, well, they might do, but on the whole, the majority of them don't appear. But a kinesiologist can pick them up in the way that kinesiology works.
So it's as if, I'm going to put it out there to you, that the universe, via your children, was talking to you and saying, Margie, you shouldn't be doing all this finance stuff. Your calling is to help other people. What do you think?
I always wanted to help people. And when I was little, I would stomp around on my little short legs saying I wanted to be a nurse. And then my older sister read medicine, and I thought, I don't know that being a nurse is quite enough, really. So anyway, one way and another, I left all that side behind me, and I went off and became an accountant.
Nothing like complete different, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I do feel like I've landed in a bed of clover now. I just adore what I do, and it's a gift. And I've as time has gone on, the longer I've been doing this, the more I can do, if you see what I mean. It's
Yeah.
just phenomenal.
So I want to take you back a little bit, because I am interested to know how you dealt with things. Your husband was in the army, and my husband's not in the army, so I've got him with me. And I know that as a mum, we're always doing the mummy juggle, and it's easier to do the mummy juggle when you have your partner with you, or you have someone by your side. But obviously you had times where you didn't have your husband with you for periods of times. So how did you deal with, in essence, being a single parent, and how did you manage to look after yourself and be Margie and not always mum?
Yeah, great. Well, my husband Nick left the army when the oldest child Victoria was 8. So no, she wasn't. She was only 6. So actually, or 7. God, you see how much I remember. I do feel that the first 5 years of motherhood, I was mostly asleep. I mean, I wasn't asleep, but I was in a daze. You're kind of on remote, and you are. You'll know this. You give, and it's like going into a bottomless pit. You get. I mean, you do get the hugs back, but you don't get any. It's not equal. The amount you give isn't what necessarily seems to come back, does it? And that is quite exhausting. It was absolutely knackering, to be honest. And then, of course, Nick had come back, bless him, after 3 months away or 6 months away or something. And you had to kind of slot him back into the family, because you got your routine. But anyway, we're still married, so I think it's worked out okay.
And I suppose that's the key to it, isn't it? As mums, I think we just get on with whatever is going on around us, because that's what we do.
Well, I think that's life, actually. I mean, you kind of get the cards you've been dealt at that time, and you can be in the right place to get a different card dealt, but you've got that hand, and you've got to make the best of what you've got, and that's the mindset thing. Not going, this is totally rubbish, and curling up and just giving up. You've got to kind of go, okay, this is what I've got. How are we going to make something out of this, what we've got in our hand? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely is. You're right. In life, it's very much the way, as an individual, we choose to view life. We can either sit in the camp of, oh, isn't this awful? Ugh, I don't know what to do. It's being done to me. Or you can sit in the camp of, this is how life is right at this moment. However, I am in control. I can do something. And, relating it back to your life and your children, you could have just gone, well, the doctors have said that I've got to apply this cream, and my daughter, it will be what it will be, and I just apply the cream all the time. However, you chose to say, well, I don't think that is the answer, and there is something else. And eventually you got to the best answer for your daughter. And like in your words, she was the healthiest she'd ever been after you'd gone and seen a kinesiologist. So I think it very much is determined by how we choose to view life.
Yeah, and your resilience at that point. So we kind of all get to a position with our health, and of course, health is how healthy we are in our body also reflects how healthy we are in our head. I mean, not surprisingly, they are connected. Might be through a little neck, but they are connected. And I think people's resilience depends on the history of what else is going on inside them. So if you look at something like long COVID, some people will have COVID and be absolutely fine and bounce back. And some people will have COVID and they will go into a spiral of long COVID. And the reason, as I see it, is that the one person has got a whole mass of history in there, and it might be other infections which are just dormant. And the COVID is the thing which has tipped them over the edge into being not well. And so it is with your resilience about how you cope with a child not being well or some obstacle in your way. I mean, I've always thought of obstacles as things which you work a way around. So I don't see a brick wall. I see that there's something you can go over, around, or under, you know.
Yes, I like it. So if you were to go back in time and give yourself some advice before you became a mum, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say it is about the best source of information about your health is actually inside you. And when we go to the doctor, they use their own experience and their own learnings to apply that externally to you or your child or whoever. But actually, you already know the answer, even if you can't quite access it. The answer's already there, or the root of the problem is already known to you. And it's about, so you need to start there and trust yourself. You know, or like my daughter who had the good blood tests or the fine blood tests, she wasn't right, but the traditional treatment was going, ooh, this is all there is. But actually, we know there was something else going on, and you know yourself better than anybody else, really. So that was part of it, and therefore taking responsibility for yourself. Don't let somebody say, oh, well, you've got this, and it's a one-way street, and that's all there is to it. Take responsibility.
Oh, I love that. And I think as mums, especially, you know, when if it's the first time we've become a mum, we can't help but second guess ourselves and think people who are mums, well, obviously they know better because they've been doing it longer. But the thing is, we're unique. Our baby is unique, and we're connected to our baby. So actually, like you said, we are the best person to know what it is, and we just gotta but trust ourselves and have the belief that we do know what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's right. And if you and look for an alternative, you know, keep going.
Keep going. So what 3 things do you wish you knew before you became a mum?
I think making time for yourself. You asked me earlier about whether I made time for myself when the children were smaller, and no, I didn't. And it's making time to be truly present with each child as well, individually. I was given advice when I was first married to always make sure I had at least 5 minutes talking and really interacting with my husband. And I, as a newly married, I thought, what barking advice? Of course I will. But then there are times when times go on and things are just so busy, and you have to actually sort of pull yourself back and go, yeah, I must actually do that, because so many things go wrong because of lack of communication. And I wish I'd made myself do that for each of my children. So that piece of advice I would like to have known. And when a child comes back from school and says, Mummy, everyone's got Nike trainers, or everyone's got cheese strings in their lunchbox. It's one child possibly, and all the others are really envious, perhaps, but it's certainly not everyone. And knowing how manipulative children can be, and actually as a parent, that comes to I mean, I'm lucky. I've always had a husband that being as one with your approach to the child, because otherwise they'll just play you off, won't they? They'll see that chink in the armor. I probably did it myself.
Well, it's coming from, they're coming from a positive point of view, because as far as they're concerned, there's this thing that they want, and they're thinking, well, how do I get that thing? So it's a positive position. It's just that they're not going about it in the way that maybe you or I would go about it.
Possibly. I think you also, small children also like knowing their boundaries, don't they? And perhaps I would like to have known that when beforehand. That they don't need lots of choice when they're small, because that is really confusing. It's like going into the supermarket and seeing 15 packets of rice on there and you can't work out which one to get, so actually you walk out with none. But they need very limited options, and they like that security of knowing where their boundaries are. I think we're quite indulgent with the number of choices we'll give them sometimes, and it's disconcerting for them.
I also think it comes from what your background is. So, like for me, my mum and dad had a seaside restaurant, which was lovely. We got to experience lots of things that others didn't experience. And on the flip side, you know, there were restrictions in life, which were, it wasn't as easy for my mum and dad, for example, to come and see special assemblies or to see the Christmas performance. So as a result, I've said to myself, with my children, I want to be there at every sports day, at every special assembly, at every Christmas play, at every, because I'm obviously making up for what I didn't have. And I know what, you know, it's only a small thing, but that's all I'm saying. As a result of where I've been, it's influenced what I do for my children. And I think that's the same for most parents. Would you agree?
I would say so, yes. We have things which we, you know, sometimes little things will pop up into my head of things that I perhaps didn't have in childhood. And I realized that I've overcompensated my children for it, or I've had enjoyment out of them having that, you know. So, and why not? It's great.
Why not? So we are actually coming towards the end of our time together, but before we go, I do have two final things. The first one is, what 3 things would you like everyone to take away from our conversation today?
Doing what I do with the nutrition and the kinesiology, I would think, don't dismiss alternative therapies. If you're not getting the answers you want, keep looking. Alternative therapies may be unconventional, but if the conventional thing is you're hitting a brick wall, keep looking for something which works, is one of them. If you've got any aches and pains, people can put it down to getting older, or they could put it down to menopause, which is such a huge thing. You've got a very large bit before it, the day, and then you've got a very large bit after it. And yeah, our hormones go all over the place. But those are not necessarily the causes. Don't go, oh, it's perimenopausal. Have a look, and just perhaps explore that a little bit further. I mean, you've seen people who we sail a lot, and you see people who are sailing aged in their late 70s, 80s, and they're managing to do that. And then you'll see somebody else of a similar age who really can hardly get out of the chair. And don't be that person who can't get out of the chair, really. And quite often with me, some of these issues can be solved in just a session or two. So, and you're cutting out a lot of the wait time, a lot of the trial and error. So sometimes it's worth finding a solution which works for you, or you think will work for you, grabbing the nettle, doing it, and then hopefully getting over that hurdle, whatever it is. Those would be my bits of advice.
Oh, thank you, Margie. And finally, people will be listening to this conversation and saying, Margie's a fascinating lady. I love what she says and I love what she does, but I'm not connected to her. Make it easy for us and tell them how they can get in touch and connect with you.
Probably the easiest way is to Google my name, but it's not the easiest one to spell, Margie Chavasse, or go to NRG Nutrition. Just put that into Google and you will find me on there. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'd love to link in with people. If they tell me they've listened to me on Maria's podcast, that would be fantastic.
Yes. Oh, well, I've loved our conversation today, Margie. It's been lovely to find out more about you, and especially your mum journey, and also how you help people today.
Thank you very much, Maria.
You're welcome. So thank you, everybody, for listening, and thanks, Margie, for being our guest. Take care, everyone. I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast episode, and if you did, then of course please share it with other mums. I have lots more resources for you that will help you on your journey through life. Just visit my website to access them, which is mummyonabreak.co.uk. You can also find out details about my book, Busy. Take care and see you the next time.